Coming up on this week's episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast, return guest Elijah Miller joins Will and I to talk about the anime Jujutsu Kaisen. All that and more coming right after this. I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The Irreverent Nerds. Bum, bum, bum.
Nerds! For those of you who are not yet aware, we are currently offering a monthly subscription service for our listeners for the low price of $2.99 per month. I mean, that's like the price of what, a 12-ounce drip coffee at Starbucks or half of a Starbucks latte. For $2.99 a month, subscribers will gain access to 2 brand new bonus episodes dropping on the first and third Fridays of each month, plus our entire back catalog of bonus episodes. And that ranges from our most recent film review of the 2023 movie Flash, going all the way back to another movie, our very first bonus episode, which not coincidentally is connected to Flash, and that is Tim Burton's 1989 film Batman. And there's a lot in between that you're going to miss out on if you don't subscribe. So hey, click on the link in the description today to get started. Nerds, thank you so much. Now back to today's episode. Nerds.
Nerds. and a nerd.
And otaku, is that what you said, Will?
Yeah.
Otaku.
Oh yeah, otakus, weebs. All groups represented.
Remind me again the literal translation of that.
Otaku?
Yeah.
Otaku.
A person who never leaves their house.
They like live in their mom's basement. Or they're just watching anime and reading manga all day and playing video games. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was started as a derogatory term in Japan, but American anime fans took it as a badge of pride.
Nice.
Turn the negative to a positive.
According to Wikipedia, it is a Japanese word that describes people with consuming interests, particularly in anime, manga, video games, or computers. Makes sense. Yeah, I feel like nerd or geek may have once fit in that spot, but it seems like those are almost too ubiquitous now. So like, I don't know what the equivalent in America would be. Because like almost everybody's calling themselves a nerd now. I mean, even us, even Will and I. But it's like there's like there's like hardcore nerds, and then there's like casual nerds.
I fell over.
My daughter's walking in the background, by the way. That's pretty freaking awesome. Well, hey guys, so Elijah, you have now joined the ranks of the greats, such as Mr. Dan Johnson and Lars DeSenza as a three-peat guest.
Hey, feels good.
Yeah, man. So thanks for coming on again. Like, wasn't necessarily planned, but we had already decided on a topic, and then you started talking about it last week, and we're like, hey, you like that too? And so here we are. Jujutsu, am I saying that correct? Jujutsu Kaisen?
Yeah.
Jujutsu.
I hear a lot of people say jujitsu. I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like grappling. I think it's funny how they kind of mix that up. But yeah, you say it right, Jujutsu Kaisen.
And what does is jujutsu a common word in Japanese? I don't know if you know.
As far as I know, it's not a common word in Japanese, but in the story itself, jujutsu is how they refer to sorcery.
Okay.
So they consider themselves jujutsu sorcerers. Yeah, so that's kind of like the label kind of represents the entity as far as like the people that handle supernatural events in the story. So any sorcerers that essentially protect innocent people from curses or demons or jujutsu sorcerers.
And it's also like I've seen only the first episode thus far, so you're definitely our expert for this episode. Um, but the it's also the name of the school, right? Where
Yeah,
yeah, because I noticed. So it's kind of in a sense like a school of sorcerers, but then it's also like a physical like um I think I don't think they use the term high school, but like that's like the equivalent. I think they're in Japan, right?
essentially, yeah, because they have essentially the jujutsu school is like a 3 year thing, which I think is the case for high schools in Japan. So they go on first year, second year, third year. Um, and they refer to the third year students in the series, but at this point in time, most of them are like actually expelled. But they do show up way later in the series. So yeah.
Well, to start us off for listeners that aren't familiar with this, and I just recently become familiar with it myself, and but I'm reading from the wiki here, just a brief synopsis, and obviously Elijah's gonna fill us in more, and he's gonna try and convince Will and I to. He's trying to convince me to keep watching it, and Will to begin watching it. It's like, why should we spend our precious time on this show, or should we?
Yeah,
I don't
Jimmy
know.
Conn
That's what we have to decide it by the end of this podcast. So no pressure. Um,
Yeah.
I want to
so
see your guy.
yeah. So let's see. This is just really brief, according to Wiki. The story of Jujutsu, which apparently it can also be said Jujitsu. So apparently it refers to the same thing, like the school of martial arts, like
Oh,
officially. But like you said, in the context of the show, it's kind of more like a school of sorcerers. But anyway, it's set in a world where cursed spirits feed on unsuspecting humans, and fragments of the legendary and feared demon Ryomen Sukuna have been lost and scattered about, which we find out those fragments are actually fingers and toes.
yeah.
Oh, should any curse consume Sukuna's body parts, the power they gain could destroy the world as we know it. Fortunately, there exists a mysterious school of jujutsu sorcerers who exist to protect the precarious existence of the living from the supernatural. And is that, as the series goes on, is that like global, or is that mostly like Japan's?
The focus is going to be in Japan, for the most part, and you kind of see the entirety of the ranks of jujutsu sorcerers within Japan. And it branches out from the main cast considerably because you have the school and you have the students, then you have the teachers there, but then you also have like what are essentially which I guess you could find in different fields, but you have like these great lineages of sorcerers and bloodlines too, and that becomes relevant through some of the characters in the main cast. There's characters who have like bloodline affiliations or like long family lineages through sorcery that make them higher ranking in a social aspect, and you also get to see how that affects the way the system of jujutsu sorcery works and how they choose to handle different things. Yeah.
Now, is that, and Will, you can chime on this too, because you've seen more anime than I have in general, like the idea of like the school of sorcery, but then it being ancestral, like you said, kind of passed down. Is that a common motif within anime in general? Is that relatively unique to the best of your knowledge within this anime, or because I know
Mm,
like with American television, obviously you have certain motifs or certain themes that get repeated in different series, but each one kind of does its own twist on it. Would that be something like that being passed down? That'd be something you might see in other anime as well.
mm, I say yeah. It's pretty common. Generally, you'll have, and also depending on the genre, like with some magic type anime, you see it because, which I will say, is definitely different. I consider Jujutsu Kaisen more supernatural than magic, but in some magic anime, you'll see in a world where one system of power kind of stands above all, you'll see where people who have like certain lineages may be treated more favorably or may be able to maneuver in those systems um, easier than others. For example, I'm also watching an anime called Mashal, which is Magic and Muscle, which is essentially kind of like uh a almost like a Harry Potter parody that can also get kind of serious at times. But in that story, as I'm watching it, I'm seeing that there's characters who have family names that are well known, or you know, certain bloodlines, and those people are like treated and regarded, or even just like have a reputation that precedes them simply because of that. So, in anime, the generational thing is definitely like pretty pretty common. It's employed in different ways, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I think every season is just the main character is a different generation of the same family lineage. Um, but yeah, it's definitely like pretty common in anime though.
Yeah, and you made a Harry Potter reference there, and that's something that came to my mind as well as I was watching the first episode and thinking about, like, even as they mentioned, like the demon Ryuman Sukuna having in a sense split his power with his fingers and
Uh,
toes. It reminded me of Voldemort in his with the
Mm,
Horcruxes. I don't know how familiar you
yeah,
are with the Harry Potter, but um, yeah, so it reminded me a bit of that. In addition to, like you mentioned, the heritage and the family names and things like that within
it's
Harry
crossing
Potter.
nerd streams.
Yeah, don't cross the streams.
yeah, it's definitely similar in that way, which I think is cool, especially them having like a school or an academy for it. Although I will say that like Jujutsu Kaisen, it definitely presents like a more overt sense of like danger for the characters more immediately than like Harry Potter. Like if you could imagine like seeing the first Harry Potter movie and then like Harry has to like fight a Dementor or something like that, like first year. Like Jujutsu Kaisen definitely, you know, definitely has no problem throwing the characters to the wolves at different times. Especially starting from like the first two episodes.
Yeah, it gets
Like,
intense right off the bat.
yeah,
like like it starts with the the main character, uh Yuji Itatori. He's sitting there being told he's going to be executed. It's like a flash forward. I was like, okay, well, this is intense.
oh yeah,
um and that initially threw me off a bit, but then when I got to the second episode, they kind of circled back around. I was like, okay, makes sense now why they started. And I was like, oh, that's clever. I like that. I like that opening.
oh yeah. It's yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's actually something I didn't notice until the other day. That I'm glad you brought up that introduction specifically because where you find Yuji in the beginning of the series, if you so Jujutsu Kaisen does have a prequel. Um, I believe
Right.
it's called Jujutsu Kaisen Zero. It was a manga, and then it was adapted into a movie. And the main character of that story was actually put in a very similar position to Yuji. Well, actually, it was the exact same position, um, for similar reasons. And I think it's funny now being able to, after seeing that, looking at the main anime and seeing, oh yeah, they kind of like because the events take place a year apart from the movie and the main series. So it's kind of funny seeing like a year apart when things come back around, there's somebody else who's in the position of getting, basically being prepped to be executed for being in contact with a high level cursed spirit in some way. So I do think it's interesting how they kind of like employ that theme again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
I
I would recommend the movie too.
yeah, no, I'd like to catch that, and that may be something we could do for a future movie of the month as well. Like, um, I noticed, like, in thinking about kind of like definitions and descriptions of the world here. I noticed there was a little bit of exposition in the first episode where they talked about what a curse was and where it came from. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. If I understood correctly, they are, like, in a sense, like manifestations of negative emotions. Like, so if there's places, like, for some reason, they, which this does seem to make maybe a little bit more sense in Japanese culture, because I know there's so much pressure in high school to make it to, I think, the university level or their equivalent there. Like the tests are pretty intense from what I've heard. Like even some people, if they don't get in, commit suicide. It's just it's rough. So this makes a little more sense there. But like these, the way they described it was like these centers of negative emotion. The negative emotion like builds up and eventually turns into a curse. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's more or less the gist of it. Like the cursed spirits are the manifestation of lots of negative emotions, and because of that, they're more prone to popping up in certain places, and they're also, the strength of them is affected by where they are. There's a point in the show, it may be the second or third episode, when they introduce Nobara, who's the female member of the trio that we see, that we follow in the beginning. And they make a distinction that curses that are found within the city, because there's a higher population of people, are more likely to be stronger and more intelligent, because there's more energy being fed to them. Um, but yeah, essentially, cursed spirits are the manifestation of those negative emotions that people have, and that also, it also does a lot when it comes to the identity of the spirits, um, depending on um, depending on what the negative emotions are projected at, that can actually shape the identity of the spirit. Um, and within the manga, some of the initial cursed spirits that we see that are of a higher level are basically based off of natural disasters.
Mm.
And you'll see as you go
like
on,
like tsunami, hurricane, that kind of thing, or earthquake,
volcanoes,
volcano.
yeah, stuff like that. Um, so they do good with the way they design some of the cursed spirits to articulate how the concentration of negative emotions pointing towards different things can essentially manifest a cursed spirit that's based on that particular fear or entity that people are projecting negativity on.
Sorry, my daughter's giving me a high five right
Oh no, it's cool.
now. So Will, you're at least for the irreverent nerds, you're a resident expert on Japanese mythology. Does that bring anything to mind, like the idea of negative emotions producing a cursed spirit, or being connected to a cursed spirit in some fashion?
Well, Richard, it reminds me of Ghostbusters 2. Um, well, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I dabble in yokai a little bit, bakemono, but no, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it. But I do know that some bakemono yokai are created from a buildup of negative emotion upon death. Like if someone's about to get executed and they just keep thinking about revenge, that they might come back as a vengeful ghost. Yurei, I think, is the word for it. Yurei. But that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Okay. The one thing I was going to ask you about, 'cause I know you and you have talked about this. I think back in the old days, and Elijah, I don't know if you've heard any of our old episodes or not, but we used to, way back in the first season, we did these little segments where Will would do one called Japan Jaunt. So about a 5 to 10 minute segment, he would talk about something, from either Japanese folklore, mythology, or anime, manga, that kind of thing. I do remember you talking some about the Japanese concept of demon, and obviously that features in this story significantly. But how would it? I know we translate it as demon, but the concepts are different, definitely, than kind of the Western
Right.
Judeo-Christian idea of demon. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Who, me?
Yes, sir.
Um, well, I haven't read up recently, so I'm not very prepared. But it's my understanding that that role would probably be given to the Oni. Uh, Elijah, do you have any thoughts?
Mm, I don't know. As far as I find that Japanese culture seems to have a little bit more nuance when it comes to how they identify and depict like demons and supernatural creatures. As far as in Western culture, it seems like a lot of it is innately tied to like religious practices and narratives. Because for me, growing up here, the concept of a demon was normally always kind of tied to, like, say, the devil or hell or things like that. And then a lot of like American fantasy or, it's kind of based off of that. So you might see like, something, you might hear like Dante's Inferno or something like that and
Hmm.
the different levels of hell. Um, but when it comes to things like Japanese culture, it can be like, in some ways a lot looser, but I think it comes from like the folklore where a lot of stories you hear from like or you may research from like older Japanese culture, it seems like the supernatural and the natural at one point walked hand in hand a lot more. So you'll see folklore and they'll say, people may encounter demons in certain places or things like that. So I think for me, I'd say probably that's the difference I see as far as like the American versus Japanese observation of like what a demon is or how they work.
Right. Maybe, but with Oni, maybe I'm being too literal. I suppose that a demon in the Japanese thought could be any evil spirit, like a kitsune or
Mm.
a bakineko. Um, I was thinking more literal. The Onis, um, I think, are associated with the Buddhist hell or something like that.
Yeah, I was
Mm.
actually looking that up on Wikipedia. Uh, According to Wikipedia, the Oni is a type of yokai, demon, orc, ogre, or troll in Japanese folklore. They are believed to live in caves or deep in the mountains. It says they are known for their superhuman strength and have been associated with powers like thunder and lightning, along with their evil nature manifesting in their propensity for murder and cannibalism. So fun. uh, but
Wow.
the superhuman strength caught my attention in relation to Jujutsu Kaisen because uh, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Elijah, but Megumi Fushiguro, who we meet in the first episode, is he a demon himself, or is it more that he calls upon like? Because I know he lets loose the demon dogs in that first fight. So I wasn't sure if he was a demon himself or just he's in connection with demonic powers and implements them for good, quote unquote.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing with Fushiguro is that in with with him in particular, he uses what are because he is a human sorcerer, but he uses what are called shikigami, which essentially are in Jujutsu Kaisen, they're like familiars. Like they're definitely still demons, but they're ones that he can capture and then control. And he summons them using his curse technique, which is called the 10 Shadows technique, which he uses the shadows as a medium in order to manifest these things,
Mm.
these creatures, so to speak. And he can command them to fight for him or, help serve whatever objective that he's trying to accomplish at the time. But that's something that pops up again. There's demons that people can essentially capture or use to serve them, and which is different from the cursed spirits that they find like out in the wild. Um, and I was trying to look it up because they say shikigami. Well, according to Wikipedia, shikigami is a term for a being from Japanese folklore. But in Jujutsu Kaisen, it seems like they use that term to refer specifically to curses or spirits that are under the control of another person.
Excuse me. Now in this one, thinking of the curses, obviously when they come to light, I caught on to a couple things. One, it seemed that not everyone can see them.
Mm-hmm.
For one, like I don't know if this is kind of like this jujitsu's version of the force sensitive or whatnot. You know what I mean? Where you can, so only certain people could see them, and it seemed like Fushiguro was surprised that Yuji could see him, but maybe associated with it just because Yuji was in that space where they were manifesting out of the demon finger,
Mm-hmm.
the
Oh
cursed demon
yeah.
finger. But yeah, obviously they're ugly sons of bitches, and but they take um physical form, which I guess if you couldn't visually see them, but I guess I don't know if it'd just be like a poltergeist where you just see stuff like throwing down or throwing, exploding, but then you can't see what's causing it. But then for people like Yuji or Fushiguro or Satoru, they can visually see them. I guess is that like a magical sense or a sorcerer's sense or something?
It definitely comes from it definitely being able to see curses comes from being a person who possesses cursed energy, which is basically the foundation for the power system of this series. And cursed spirits, while sorcerers possess cursed energy that they can wield, towards the end of killing cursed spirits are entirely comprised of cursed energy, which also kind of informs their anatomy and the way they move. For example, cursed spirits can regenerate very easily from like non-lethal wounds. Human sorcerers, on the other hand, it's a rarity for a human to be able to do the same thing. With Satoru Gojo being one of the exceptions, which for the sorcerers they call the active healing reverse curse technique. Um, but yeah, as far as being able to like see cursed spirits, it's definitely not something that everyone can do, especially regular people, which definitely gives the sorcerers an edge when it comes to being able to handle these things. But yeah, being able to see cursed spirits is definitely and it's kind of funny because Yuji even being able to see the cursed spirits before he ate Sukuna's finger, as the story progresses, you actually gain more insight into why that is. I don't want to spoil it too much, but there's some very, very intricate plot lines laid out throughout this series that come to fruition at different times, and Yuji's presence alone is one of those things. So the only thing I can say is that one, Mike Fushiguro was definitely him being surprised was a good reaction because essentially Yuji is a normal human. But as you read on, you'll start to see that his presence was more or less for a reason. It wasn't an accident that he arrived on the scene and was able to serve the purpose he does. Which is kind of the interesting part about it is that the further you get into the story, the more you realize that a lot of things were already kind of laid out or set up to happen, so to speak. But Yuji being able to see cursed spirits as essentially a normal human is also like kind of like an anomaly unto itself because he really shouldn't have been able to. But later on, you'll kind of be able to figure out why he was probably an exception even before he ate the finger.
Yeah, like initially I was it sounds like it's going in a slightly different direction from what I was thinking at first, but my initial thought was maybe it's because he was in contact with the talisman, so he had like maybe it accidentally absorbed some of that energy. Um, but it sounds like you're hinting that it has more to do maybe with his heritage, which in the first episode, I mean, they're laying the groundwork, which I could tell, they were laying the groundwork for something that will pay off later. Hopefully, not every series does a good job of that, but
Yeah.
but when his grandfather is dying, he says he wants to tell him something about his parents, and
Ooh.
Yuji's like, no, I don't want to hear it, Grandpa.
Ooh.
And then Grandpa's like, well, you are strong. Just use your strength to do good, not like me, and then he dies.
Oh man.
So then
Oh,
Yuji doesn't get to find out whatever it was that the grandfather was going to tell him. So I'm assuming that pays off at some point.
that pays off. That pays off. And it is oh man, that really pays off. Like had he just listened to what his grandfather had to say, from the viewer standpoint, there would have been there's so much story that would have just been compressed if he just listened to that. And see, then again, that's also the thing I love about Jujutsu Kaisen is that as much as I've read and as much as I've, consumed now, it's like even things like that, that's like a huge Easter egg because what his grandfather had to say about Yuji's parents specifically, I mean, this isn't much of a spoiler, but specifically Yuji's mom, that is like very, very integral to like the plot of the story. Especially like I said before, the events that kind of set things into motion. But yeah, that like when I was reading the manga and I saw Yuji's parents and like more specifically who his mom is, it just like it was like there's one of those things where you're like, they planned this all from the beginning. Like none of this was by chance. Um, I'm trying to think of a villain who operates that intricately within like another fictional story or anime, but I can't right now. But I will tell you that it won't come in the first season. They'll hint at it though. And here's the thing about them that I think is funny. They actually give you more information that just doesn't become relevant until it's contextualized later. But
I like that.
yeah, because like as it relates to Yuji's parents, there is a particular sorcerer who they tell you about in the first season, who is who is he's tied very, very tightly to the events that are taking place, but you just wouldn't know it at the time they tell you about him because he himself just isn't made that relevant at the point.
Mm.
So it's easy to forget. But they actually give you so much. I mean, like Granddad even mentioning Yuji's parents, like that unto itself is like, a bombshell. Like
Mm.
once you see that, you're just gonna be like, oh, so this is what it is.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh
would it
man.
be spoiling anything to say whether they're still alive or not? Would that be spoiling? Because I was assuming that he was an orphan, but wasn't sure. But if that would be a spoiler, don't tell me. But
I mean, definitely not an orphan. I don't know about his father. His mother is technically still alive. Um, and
technically,
I say technically just because the identity of his mom is it's one of those things where it's like the truth is stranger than fiction. So technically his mom is alive, and that has more to do with the identity of who his mom really is. Um, as opposed to his dad, who I don't think I don't think had the most agency necessarily, but was there. But yeah, like dad, I don't know. I could assume is not alive since usually lives with grandpa, but mom or the being we know as Yuji's mom definitely is still there, definitely still around.
nice. The being
Wilding
known
out.
as that sounds like that should be a rapper's name, like the being known as Yuji's mom. Like, oh,
Being known as.
uh,
Oh man, it's just it's so dense, but it just makes so much sense as you go through it and see everything. Yeah,
nice.
it's a lot of Easter eggs.
That's getting me excited for watching more. Um, Well, we're coming up on our break here, so we're gonna take a break, and then we'll come back and with our second segment. So
All right.
after these messages, we'll be right back.
There we go.
Joker here. I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about the Irreverent Nerds. They're sitting here in my hideout, all tied up. So they can't say this themselves, but they would like you to know that there are multiple options by which you can connect with them. Their Instagram handle is at irreverent_nerds. They're on Facebook and YouTube as simply the Irreverent Nerds. Ugh, so pedantic. And of course, they are on your podcast app. If you listen on Spotify, scroll down and you will see a question. What did you think of this episode? They welcome your feedback, or so they told me. They also post episode-specific polls and questions from time to time, so please feel free to jump in and give them your 2 cents while they're still alive. All right, nerds, I've talked enough. Let's get back to this week's episode. It might be their last.
We're back, nerds. We've
Hey.
returned. Will is here too.
It's only been one.
Will, did you ever watch there was an episode that you couldn't make it for? I forget why. I don't know if you were sick or what. And I kind of poked fun at you a bit on an Instagram video. I don't know if you ever watched it. But no, I used a Scottish accent in that. Yeah. You'll have to go through and watch it. It's like Willie. It's just fun saying Willie in this Scottish accent. Willie. Bart. Get off my lawn. No. We still haven't done a Simpsons episode. We've got to do that.
Oh, me too.
Oh, wow.
We've been talking about it almost since the beginning. What were you gonna say?
I can say that I've recently been watching The Simpsons again.
Yeah,
even
me
though
too.
I missed watching the first episode of what we're actually talking about.
I see how it is. Priorities. No. In fairness to Will, we did a lot of work this week for the podcast because we dropped 2 bonus episodes, trying to get caught up for our subscribers. So hey, subscribers, go listen. I can see whether you do.
Oh, 2 of you.
What?
Oh, 2 of you.
Yeah, at this point, we just have 2 subscribers, which is hey, that's better than 0 subscribers.
That's true.
I'm grateful for both of them. One of them's a ghost. We don't know who he or she is, or he, she, them, and the other
It's a cursed spirit.
It could be. It could be. The other we do know because I asked him to be our first subscriber and he agreed. So no, he was already supporting us through the first setup, and yeah, he actually is getting it for a discount now. It's less than he was supporting us at before. But no. Anyway, back to the topic at hand, Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm trying to remember where we left off. It's been like 30 minutes since we left off. Do you guys recall?
I do remember before we got off. I do remember talking about how since Will hasn't seen the first episode, he's actually in a pretty unique position because the movie's a thing. So he could actually watch the prequel leading into that, and it would actually provide more context for the things you see in the first season. Because the thing that's interesting about it is like the way the story goes, they kind of treat you like you already know what's going on. Like, there's definitely exposition, for the world and the characters, but they make references to characters, they make references to specific events that have happened within their world, and a lot of which take place in that first movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so which is very interesting. There's a character they mentioned in season one. I think it may be a few episodes before they get to him, but they mention a character named Okatsu and Yuta Okatsu, and he's actually the protagonist of the prequel.
Oh.
And he was in a situation similar to Yuji where he was set up to be executed until Gojo intervened. Um, and yeah, he definitely becomes relevant again later on in the series, but being that these two stories only take place like a year apart, it's still pretty fresh for some of the characters in the main cast who are actually there. So it is I think now that that's out, it's definitely a good way to kind of, get into it. And then the series kind of provides further context as to the significance of those events after the fact. Yeah, so that's
Nice.
yeah.
So it's kind
So
of like
there's yeah.
reading the appendices to the Lord of the Rings, I guess. Like, I don't know if you've read the Lord of the Rings, but it gives like a historical background context to a lot of what goes on in the main storyline through like the
Uh,
Fellowship of the Ring to the Return of the King. But then if you have the full volume set like I do, there's appendices at the end that give historical background, but it comes at the end of the book. It's like, ah, anyway, it made me think of
oh
that.
wow. Oh
Well,
yeah.
what
I mean, it
it's
kind
more
of
like
is like that.
reading The Hobbit before Lord of the Rings.
Well, see, that's a little different though,
Mm,
because The Hobbit was published before Lord of the Rings, whereas the appendices, like, unless you went ahead and went to the back of the book, you wouldn't necessarily know they were there until you read through and you're like, oh, wait, there's appendices?
hmm,
Anyway, just made me think of
hmm.
that. Kind of like because the prequel,
Okay.
when you're watching season one, right? You know, you
Uh,
didn't know a prequel movie was coming.
right.
So then it comes out. Did it come out after season one or during season one?
I think it might have been. It may have been during season one, maybe during the end, because I had read the prequel manga. My friend
Right.
put me on, so I'd read that beforehand. But the movie, I think, definitely came out during the anime, probably towards the end of season one.
Okay,
So I remember when the trailers were coming out, and I saw it like twice in theaters. I think.
nice.
But the prequel manga was published before Jujutsu Kaisen. Is that correct?
I believe it was. Because manga have this interesting thing where before a story goes out, they normally do like the one shot.
Yeah.
So I believe it may have been published as the one shot, but I'm not sure. But based on how manga normally goes, it's my assumption that it was published or at least created prior to the main story. Yeah. But they do a pretty good job adapting it though to the movie, I will say.
Great.
Yeah, almost bit by bit. Yeah, so I'd say it's definitely worth it. But also I'd say it's worth it in general to watch the series because it's pretty refreshing. Because one thing I could say is when you watch a lot of anime, especially of a certain genre, um, especially people my age, like a lot of fans can get kind of jaded because it's like, you've seen all the tropes before, you've seen a lot of things tried different ways before. And I think Jujutsu Kaisen, just as good as it is kind of, in a way, taking notes from other anime in the genre of shonen and supernatural. It's also really good at like subverting your expectations as someone who's already may have already patronized a lot of that content. Um, so a lot of people when it first came out, there are comparisons to Bleach, comparisons to Yu Yu Hakusho, comparisons to Hunter X Hunter, even when it came to the action and the power system. And I think it's pretty good at taking some familiar tropes and kind of flipping them upside down. So when you see Yuji as essentially he eats the finger and then he becomes the vessel, excuse me, the vessel for this like crazy demonic cursed spirit. And, a lot of times you see that trope of like the inner demon. Um, I think Naruto's probably the most popular one where the fox demon is sealed inside of him. So because of that, he's kind of shunned. But he develops a relationship with this demon, over the course of time that actually starts to help him out. Whereas in Jujutsu Kaisen, it's like the opposite. Where as time goes on, the stakes get higher, and the demon inside of him is, completely sentient, completely has his own agenda, completely does not care about Yuji at all. Um, and I think the way they take that narrative trope and employ it is very, very, very fresh because they don't try to do the thing where it's like, oh, the demon becomes your buddy. It's like, no, it's like the person living inside you hates you and he wants you and all your friends to die.
Quite,
So,
quite literally dealing with your inner demons,
Yeah.
inner demon.
oh yeah, and he happens to be the worst one from history.
And as a side note, I'm glad I'm not the only one who says Hunter X Hunter when it's actually Hunter Hunter.
Oh yeah, I even when I learned that, I just have to. I can't leave the X out. It just sounds cooler. I mean, I guess now, like when you think about it, it's like I guess it's like a stylized thing, but like to me, Hunter X, it just nah. Hunter X. Can't forget the X.
Maybe the fans can decide like this is what it's really called. It's like you put the X in there. It's your fault, creators.
I was corrected some time ago about that.
Is it like Hunter? You can call it Hunter squared or Hunter times Hunter, Hunter multiplied by Hunter.
Hunter squared.
Yeah. Multiplied by itself.
Oh man. Jujutsu squared.
So this is like a side note. I've got the Jujutsu Kaisen wiki, which is jujutsu-kaisen.fandom.com for those of you that are interested in checking it out for yourself. But this is a popular show. Like on this page alone, they're claiming at least to have 48,240 edits to 800 articles and 4,197 images. I was like, dang. Whew. And I just got the another side note, but like I just got the as I'm dipping more and more toes into the anime world, finally got the Crunchyroll free trial, and I saw that the viewers can comment, which is cool.
Yeah.
I've never seen that on a streaming service, with exception maybe of YouTube rental or something, but yeah, I'd never seen that on a regular streaming service before, where there was like 2,000 comments on this series, like on the sidebar. Actually, it might have just been on the first episode. I'm not sure, but like I just saw it's like 2,000 comments. I was like, whoa! It's like this is very popular.
Oh yeah, it blew up, man. I mean, a lot of people claim it is one of the best like new generation anime series. Because like I said, there as well as Subversion, there's also like they have that trope where it's like you got the trio, the three young heroes. I don't know, it's interesting because it kind of takes after a lot of things, but still stands out on its own. And when my friend who put me on, my friend Millen first told me about it, it didn't seem like it was that popular at the time, especially because only one person was telling me about it. But seeing it blow up has been pretty interesting. Like I'm starting to see like a few more cosplays when I'm tabling at conventions. I'm seeing other people that may have like a little bit more fan art from it. So I'm happy it's doing well because Shonen Jump is pretty cutthroat like that. So if a series isn't performing well, they have no problem getting it out of there and bringing in a new one. So I'm happy it's maintained its popularity for that reason, just so we could actually see the story continue to play out, as it is now. It's actually on a 2-week break right now. So the last chapter that came out is going to be the last one for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I saw in the news here, it said, I'm assuming that was referring to the the manga. It says chapter 226 has officially been released.
Oh yeah.
Does that mean it's been going for 226 weeks? Or like how does that work?
Give or take, because even though it's a weekly series, there are breaks. So
Right.
there's been a few breaks during the time of its release. So
So we're talking about
you could,
roughly 4.5 to 5 years, roughly.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, give or take.
Nice. So is that um its primary means of publication is through Shonen Jump? Like, at some point, do they make like a collection and then sell that as like a trade paperback
Oh
manga?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They have volumes out. There's
volumes.
I don't remember how some people call them tankobons. I think that's like the technical name, but I just call it a
Yeah.
volume.
Volume. Okay.
Um, because you know the way we get manga here, if you weren't like reading Shonen Jump growing up, which a lot of us were, you know, whenever you got a book, it wasn't just going to be like, you know, like American comics, like a single, you know, issue. It's like, you know, you're getting like 5, 6 chapters in one book,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So yeah, it which I don't have any myself yet, but I definitely want to in the future. But yeah, it's yeah, like, you know, the volumes are coming out. They seem to be pretty there's a good number of them too. Like I think they're up to some of the most recent events in the story. Which is, I mean, at this point right now, the story's just like insane. I'm lost for words at what's going on and the stuff that's happened. But yeah, it's and the season two's been greenlit. You know, there's a preview, I think a 3 minute preview for season two now, 2 or 3 minutes. So, you know, and that's always a good sign when an anime gets renewed for another season.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, the popularity's
Good.
definitely been working in their favor.
That's good. Like, so what? So this isn't necessarily directly related. Like, are you tied in that much to like the anime community? Like, are you in like an anime group on Facebook or things like that? Do you just mostly have individual friends that are into it? You guys talk about it, that kind of thing, or
My friends are normally the first line for me. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't do internet communities too much for the things I'm into. Like even like you know, art and skateboarding. Like I could kind of get a grasp on what's going on by, you know, kind of like sifting through and you know seeing what people are talking about, seeing what people are into. But for the most part, it really just comes to like my friends, whoever I'm talking to about anime at the time. You know, Jujutsu Kaisen is definitely talked about a lot, but you know, the thing with the internet is that it's just kind of, I know there's like, you know, good people in online communities, but like, you
mm,
know, it just gets messed up for me pretty quickly because, you know, the conversations a lot of times tend to devolve into like way less relevant things, like people arguing over, you know, dumb facts or, you know, what's this and that or what's this attack really do, and it like kind of loses substance for me really quickly. So, you know, that's why normally I just talk to my friends about whatever I'm watching, and that's pretty much where like my conversations around anime start, and then I may look outside to see what other people are talking about. But yeah, for the most part, it's definitely like the homies first. Then I'll check the internet to see what they're talking about.
nice. Is that true for you too, Will? And when you do dabble in anime, is it mostly just your buddies? I know you and I talk about it a little bit for the podcast, but historically, I've not been your anime friend, so to speak.
Well, I guess my anime friend would be Tommy, but it's been over a decade since we've really used to do that. We used to watch subtitle anime together, um, and stuff like that. We'd find VHS copies. That was a long time ago.
Nice. Yeah, we're really old, Elijah. In case you hadn't noticed, I don't know if you can
You,
see the gray in my beard over Zoom.
yeah,
Will's got a. You got a little bit yet? You got any gray yet? I see a little bit in there, unless I'm imagining it. Right there, it seems to come in the front. like right there at the chin for some reason. Anyway, but you hear that, Tommy? If you're listening, you've been dropping the ball for 10 years, man. You need to get back together with Will and watch some man. Either that or Will's been dropping the ball, or you've both been dropping the ball. So
The ball's dropped.
the ball is dropped.
Twice.
Well, Richard, you,
Yeah, the balls have
I
dropped
usually
twice.
see and talk to you the most, so we have no excuse.
To the windows, to the walls, to the.
Classic.
I've been seeing that all over the place recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, it's funny how you notice things sometimes. Like, my wife and I watched the proposal a few months ago, I guess now, my first time seeing it. And Sandra Bullock sings that song at one point in the movie, and it's pretty funny. Get Low, is that the name of the song? Get Low. But it's been popping up kind of, like when you buy a new car, suddenly you notice that model all over the place. I think it's kind of that. Or like I keep seeing it pop up in memes and like Instagram and places. I'm like, it's like, what is this? Why am I suddenly noticing this everywhere? The proposal came out like 10 years ago or something.
Right. Oh man.
There's some sort of theory that the universe does that or something, like universal Google or something. I forget. But
I don't
know what the theory is called right now.
Cosmic cookies.
Something.
The algorithm knows.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, who knows, man?
Like guiding you to all these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, whether you believe in a monotheistic God or a pantheistic God, or the universe is sentient, or the force, or what have you, like, it does seem sometimes like there's some kind of algorithmic pattern at work. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not always sure, like, whether I'm reading into it, or whether it's actually there. Is like, but sometimes just like, wait. And then you have deja vu, which some people think might be.
Oh, that's just the Matrix.
Or some people think deja vu might be like yourself from like a parallel universe. There's some kind of like crossing between, like, or not, like in the multiverse. You know what I mean? Like that happened to you in another version of the multiverse, and there's like an echo of it, and that's why you have who knows, man? Like, who knows? And that just got trippy. By the way, we're doing shrooms next, so
hey, there we go.
Get some what do they call
already
it?
Got mine.
DMT. Oh, there you go. A spiky shroom there.
Well, I don't think you should eat that one.
That's like Mario on weed or something. Like, get some neon colors going. That would be interesting, actually, to play a level like that. Suddenly it just goes all neon. I don't know if neon is neon the right descriptor. I know you're the artist, so my wife corrects me all the time about my color descriptions.
In Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2, that totally happens if you touch those flying puffballs.
Oh wow! I'm gonna have to look that up.
It's been so long since I played that, and I never did have it at a Super Nintendo, so it's like my dad. I've told this story before, but we did a video game episode probably 6-7 months ago, something like that, maybe longer. We talked about, because we grew up in the 80s and 90s, so like we talked about our video game experiences, and my dad. I got 2 consoles in a row, like on Christmas, 91 and 92. Like the first one, I didn't get a choice. They just gave me a Nintendo. But the next year, and my dad loves electronics, so this was like totally him, I think secretly enjoying it through me or something. I don't know what, but he's like, hey, we're going to get you another video game system. Do you want the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis? And at the time I was like, I guess I must have played Sonic the Hedgehog and Toys R Us more than Star Fox or Super Mario World, because I chose the Sega. I don't necessarily regret that, but every now and then I was like, man, I can't play Star Fox and I can't play Super Mario World or Donkey Kong Country, except when I go to Toys R Us. But Sonic the Hedgehog is still pretty awesome, and I played this one game called NBA Action 95 a lot. This is one of the first sports games where you could create your own players and you could play a whole season and make like trades and stuff and a draft, and it was pretty cool. I used to play that a lot, but yeah, that dates me a little bit.
Wow.
Anyway, video games. Yeah, are there? Okay. I feel like there aren't too many video games based off of anime.
Oh, there are tons. They just don't come to America always.
Okay, so that's what it is. I know, like Castlevania. Although that was like which came first? Like I think the game came first, right?
Game.
Yeah.
And then
Castlevania is a really good show though too. I've never played the game, but like top tier Western animation for sure.
Cool.
Nice.
So, does Jujutsu Kaisen have any video games yet?
Not that I know of.
It's
would
coming.
Be interesting, but I don't know. I'd hope I'd hear about it if they did. I mean, I don't even have a console, but I would pressure my friends to get it for sure.
Probably for the best. More time for artwork that way. I was up playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom till 1 a.m. last night.
Yeah. Well,
I wonder if they do have a game.
Speaking of games that never or don't normally make it to the US, my sister got me this little thing, I think off of Amazon, and so it has a working screen, like you can play the games on it, but you can also plug it in just a AV cable, to your, if you have a TV that still has the connectors. Which I do, but it has about 10 or 12. I've shown it to you, Will. Like, it has at least a dozen Nintendo games, many of which were never released in the US back in the day, and some of like I was trying to remember, there's like an old version of like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers that never made it to the US, I don't think, and then there was like several others that, Will, you were saying. It's like,
are you talking about?
It's like these are
King.
Didn't you say like some of them might even be like technically illegal in the US or something? ROM hacks.
Yeah, I don't think that thing is licensed. It's got Mario on it, right?
Yeah, like a version of Mario. Yeah.
Version of Mario.
Yeah, it's interesting. And some of the games, the title doesn't match what the game actually.
Oh wow!
And some of them, some of them still have like the Japanese script and everything. So it's I need to play it again. I haven't played it in a bit. But yeah.
So
we got about 30 seconds, by the way. I'm sorry. I took up time.
I looked it up. Jujutsu Kaisen Phantom Parade is a RPG you can play for free on your smartphone.
Check that out.
Fun.
Well, Elijah, before it cuts us off, thank you so much for joining us again and for being our Jujutsu Kaisen expert this week. And,
no problem.
Yeah, until next time, nerds, live long and prosper.
Sayonara.
Sure.
Hey nerds, season 3 has come to an end. That's right, it's over. This was the finale for our 3rd season, episode 25 of season 3. We're at the halfway point of the year, coming next Wednesday. So we're taking a week off. You will not get a new weekly episode next Wednesday. We will probably re-release an old episode. So keep an ear out for that, but nothing new. Next week, we're taking a break for a week before we begin season 4. Hey, that's better than most TV shows, right? You gotta wait like months and months, sometimes years now, with streaming TV shows before you get the next season. You only gotta wait a week with your Ever Nerd. So hey, come back in a couple weeks. We'll have another new episode and another new season. There might be a few changes coming. Will and I need to meet and talk through some things, decide how we're going to approach season 4. We've already got some ideas. We're already working on plans. So don't miss it. And thank you to all of those who have stuck with us through season 3. This is officially episode 76. 76. That includes all our bonus episodes, of course, which, by the way, plug again, you can only access if you're a subscriber now. I think we've got at least 10 or 12. I need to go back and count. That would probably be good. I should have done that before I recorded this. But anyway, we've got quite a few bonus episodes now available for subscribers. We're getting into the flow of releasing 2 a month. We're aiming for the first and third Friday of each month beginning in July. So keep your ears peeled for that. We're trying to get a mailing list up and off the ground. Still working on that website. We'll get there. Thanks for your patience. If any of you have been waiting for that with bated breath, thank you for waiting. In the meantime, connect with us and all our other places. That didn't sound right. Social media. Connect with us on Instagram at irreverent_nerds. On Facebook, simply The Irreverent Nerds. That's our fan page there. And, of course, we are on YouTube. You can check out quite a few video recordings of previous episodes, vidcasts, as they say, as well as a few of the shorts that are released normally only to Instagram, occasionally to Facebook stories, but typically only to Instagram. You will find some of those on YouTube as well. Look us up. We're just The Irreverent Nerds, as you would expect. Hey guys, thanks for joining us for yet another episode, for seeing us through this season. Thank you so much to our subscribers, to all of those who have supported us by being guests or by listening, by following us on Instagram, by interacting with us on Instagram, giving us feedback. And thanks again to this week's special guest, Elijah Miller, who has now joined the pantheon of Three-peat guests, the likes of Dan Johnson and Lars DeSenza. You know, it's high company. The company wasn't high, but, you know, we value their contribution and their willingness to keep coming back. They haven't gotten tired of us yet, so thank you guys. And a special thank you, this coming from me, Richard, to my generous co-host, Will, who has given so much of his time over the past 76. Well, he wasn't there for the entire 76 episodes, but he's been there for most of them. For over a year now, he has been my coworker and co-host on the Irreverent Nerds podcast. And he has been my friend for almost 20 years. That tells you we're old, man. Like, we met in college, so we are old. Next year will be 20 years. Will, damn it, man, we're getting old. Thanks for still being my friend after all these years. And thanks for coming along this podcast journey with me. And those of you who are still listening at the end of this very long closing, we'll see you next season. Until then, live long and prosper. Sayonara. Avengers, assemble! I'm Batman.